Hi, my name is Haislop, and we're back with Lecturer Paddock to talk about citizen journalism. So first of all, what is citizen journalism to you?
Well, the way it used to be, if you wanted to be a journalist, do the work of a journalist, you had to gather the skills and experiences, or somehow convince a newspaper or a magazine or a radio or television station to hire you. And then you became part of the mainstream news media. These days, the concept is, if you're a citizen journalist, if you have the tools, you can do the job. If you're driving by the scene of an accident, you can tweet about it. Or if you are at your son's football game and you want to give commentary or tell people who won, you can do that now. You can sign up for a blog within seconds, and you can start disseminating information. So that's the idea behind citizen journalism. No longer do you have to be hired by a mainstream news organization. You can just do journalism yourself.
So it sounds like the way it used to be, citizen journalists actually benefited from journalists. So how can journalists benefit from citizen journalists, if they can at all?
Well, a great example of this is the Miracle on the Hudson. You remember when Captain Soley landed the plane on the Hudson River. The main picture that the Observer used, and a lot of other news organizations used as well, was a picture taken by someone who was not a journalist. He was a passenger on the plane and took this photo and sent it out over Twitter. Other ways, journalists can't be everywhere. So these citizen journalists can happen to be in the right place at the right time, and they can give eyewitness accounts. So there's an immediacy angle that citizen journalists have over journalists who can't be everywhere all the time. There's also an expertise angle. Engineers, college professors, people who really know what they're talking about can blog about it, can tweet about it, and journalists no longer have to interview them. Their expertise is out there, and it doesn't have to be filtered through journalism.
So what are some positives about citizen journalism, just for the general public?
Well, positives are people can participate. People who are passionate and knowledgeable about a subject can get their voice heard. There's long been a complaint of the mainstream news media that they only use the same voices again and again, and some demographic groups, some age groups, some income groups are not represented very well. So I think that's one of the great positives of it. Also, the immediacy angle again. Information doesn't have to be filtered through several layers in order to get out there. It's out there almost immediately. And citizens who participate in the news become more stakeholders in it. They're no longer just observers of the news, readers of the news. They're also participants in it, and that makes them a lot. That helps them tune in a lot more to what's going on.
Okay, and I'm sure there's some negatives too, right?
Yeah. There's some huge negatives. I'm a journalism educator because I believe that journalists need to be trained, and I think some of the examples of citizen journalists actually doing really great work are not in the areas that journalism is really vital in. Journalists need to be watchdogs. They need to hold people accountable. They need to hold leaders accountable. And to do that, it takes skill and dedication and commitment. Citizen journalists might be able to do something that a regular trained journalist cannot. Over the long haul, we still need journalists. And they can do things that citizen journalists.
Think that there is a credibility problem, or do you feel like they actually know what they're talking about most of the time, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think there's a credibility problem, but I also think there's a credibility problem in the mainstream news media as well. The mainstream news media has had its Jason Blairs and its Jack Kellys, people who have gamed the system and printed stuff that just wasn't true. But the question of credibility has always been there, and readers shouldn't blindly take what they get from a citizen journalist, and they shouldn't blindly take what they get from a regular trained journalist.
Any final thoughts about citizen journalism, just general?
Yeah, I think you can't paint a broad brush.
Right.
There are some great people who are citizen journalists who are committed to their craft, who have had some training, and they're good. Like you would with anything else, you need to exercise judgment when you're reading these people. I think you can't have a little more trust in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, CNN, than you would in a citizen journalist. But as a reader, a consumer of the news, you need to be verifying the information, whether it comes from a citizen journalist or a regular journalist. I mean, you still have a responsibility as a reader.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, thank you for your time, Lecturer Paddock.
Thank
really
you.
appreciate the insight, and thanks for all the great information.